As a kid, you don't always know what you want to do with the rest of your life. As an adult with 25 years of entrepreneurial experience, Victor Viner took a cue from childhood and never let the plans of adulthood hold him down. The V2 Capital founder joins me to talk about how his diversified career path led him to a successful career on Wall Street. Victor, welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
Sure, my pleasure.
Your career has taken such a diverse route, you could say. You started your career as an options trader at the CBOE, now you work on the street. But in between there have been times where you left, and this is where it gets interesting. You left to travel the world, and then eventually you went to med school. So tell me how you made the decision.
When I graduated college, I went to the floor of the CBOE and began trading, and was an independent market maker, and did pretty well as a young guy, and then got a little bored. So when I was 27, I took some time off, took a 3-week vacation, and came back a couple of years later to Australia, New Zealand, Hawaii, Asia.
Really exciting places.
And then I had to decide what I wanted to do. So I moved out to Colorado and skied a bit. And then when I was 30, 31, was a little bored. And someone asked me a question, if I could do anything, what would it be? One of the people I was skiing with. And I said, I always wanted to be a doctor. Kind of started out that path, but never had a chance to do it. And I'm way too old now at 30, 31. And I started to look into it and ended up, I saw it was feasible.
You're never too old, right?
I would agree. So I ended up, but I had to go back to a graduate program to get into medical school and take all my sciences, which I did. And then I went to medical school in Chicago. When I was 32, I enrolled in medical school. That's
incredible. That's what I think is really interesting, because you built a multi-billion-dollar equity options advisory firm, and then later sold it to Credit Suisse. And you also were working in the medical realm, you could say. Did you find it difficult to kind of split your focus, since they're two kind of very different industries?
Right. Yes. However, what they have in common is science, math, which I really like. But at the end of it, I view it as, in any business, it's about the customer. So in healthcare, I figured out a solution to facilitate lab results between doctors and patients. There was no really effective way to do it other than calling your doctor, and he or she more than likely didn't want to talk to you. In finance, at the end of the day, no matter if you're a banker, a trader, or whatever, it should be about what you're doing for your customer, what you're doing for your investor. So there's a common thread to both of them.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So what did starting a company like that, when you started V2 Capital, that relies heavily on investors, you started that at the precipice of the Great Recession.
Right.
What did that teach you about yourself and kind of your business acumen?
Yeah, well, one thing I've learned, I've started 8 companies, and what you learn is it's easy to spend a lot of money. That doesn't mean you're going to be successful. It doesn't mean you're going to make money.
Right.
So having started my prior firm, Valeris, right at the apex before the technology crash in 2000, we had to kind of bootstrap some of the business. So I took what I learned from that when I started V2 Capital. We're very small. I hired a couple of guys the first day who are still with me today, my 2 partners. And the idea was to just run a small advisory business, learning what we knew, taking advantage of what the market was giving us at the time, and keep it lower profile. It was in Chicago, not New York, so after I sold my firm, I went back to Chicago. And the cost of operating a business is a bit less in Chicago.
Yeah. So what was the biggest lesson, would you say, kind of navigating through the financial crisis for you as a business owner?
Yeah, it was really, having gotten back into the business in the late 90s when stocks were flying. And I was working with a friend of mine who happened to work at Microsoft, and giving her some investment advice, and that's how I developed some of my option strategies. A lot of people, both in and out of the industry, just thought the market always went up and these stocks would always go up.
Yep.
And
kind of similar to what we're looking at today.
I would agree that, like, what's similar from my perspective, having been in the markets now 30 years, is the market really isn't pricing in a whole lot of risk. I saw that in the late 90s. You saw it prior to the 2008 financial crisis. So the takeaway is, what I've done is I've always focused on risk management. I'm not as concerned about what I can make is managing what I can lose.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I've managed my trading career. And I take the same attitude for clients' money when we're managing it.
It's a good strategy. Having such a diverse background then, what advice would you give a younger generation looking maybe if they can't decide what they want to do, would you recommend going back to school, even if you think you're too old? Is it ever too late?
It's never too late to go back to school. And now I have friends who went back in their 40s to get a medical degree, to get a PhD or master's. So I think school is great. I enjoy working with students. I do some lecturing, some teaching, which is fun. But no matter what you do, you really have to love it, and you have to have a passion. We all work too hard. And one of the things I tell younger people is working hard is no guarantee that you're going to be successful, but I don't know pretty much anybody who didn't work really hard who is successful. And you really got to like what you're doing. I know a lot of people who have gone into a variety of jobs and career paths, and they're not thrilled with it, or they're griping about it from time to time. It's too hard. So you really got to like it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I think especially in an industry like yours, you really have to love what you do to get into it. Victor Viner, founder of V2 Capital, thank you so much for joining me.
Sure. Pleasure. Thanks.